Hi, I'm Christina. I buried my husband alone. No mom, no dad, no best friend. The next morning, they didn't call. They sent me a rent bill. That's when I realized this wasn't neglect. It was erasure. They didn't just skip the funeral. They threw a party. And when I asked why, my sister said, "It wasn't about you. It was about real love." So I stopped waiting for apologies and started collecting proof. You want to know how it ends? Let me take you back to the day they decided I didn't belong. It was quiet the moment I stepped through the chapel doors. Too quiet for death, if that makes any sense. The room smelled like lilies and aged wood, that familiar mix of peace and something final. The place was modest, but someone had taken care with the setup. White cloth over the podium, soft lighting, framed photos of Arlo and me scattered across a side table. I placed the last picture myself. It was the one he loved most, us laughing, drenched in rain on our first anniversary. I stood alone, arms full of memory, while rows of empty chairs faced a coffin too full of silence. No family, not one, not my mother, not my father, not Venus, not even Tanya. They weren't late. They just didn't come. A few of Arlo's co-workers were already there. One brought his dog, a three-legged mutt Arlo used to sneak treats to in the break room. I smiled at that. At least someone who loved him showed up. The pity in their eyes didn't sting anymore. I had braced for this. But I'll admit, part of me had hoped. Hope's a stubborn thing, even when it knows better. The service began slow. Hushed voices, murmured condolences. But I wasn't listening. My mind drifted, uninvited, to the last time Arlo laughed so hard he cried, watching old home videos we'd shot on a $20 camcorder. My family never watched those, never asked to. They didn't like his laugh, said it was too much. Now he was gone, and they were still absent. The gravesite was a short drive from the chapel. It rained just enough to blur your vision without giving you the dignity of calling it tears. Gray skies, slick grass, the kind of day where even birds stay quiet. The priest spoke kindly. I couldn't tell you what he said. It felt like I was watching everything through thick glass. People moved around me. Voices filtered in and out. Arlo's mother cried quietly, gripping his father's arm, like her bones needed something to hold them together. I stood just beside her. My hands ached to do something, hold, comfort, collapse. But I stayed still. When she turned to me and whispered, "You're not alone. You're ours now." I nodded. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe that someone still claimed me. But something in me was already splitting. I kept my face dry, for Arlo. I reached for my phone. Not to take photos, not to check messages. Just instinct. A habit. And that's when I saw it. My screen lit up. "We need to talk." "No, I'm sorry." "No, how are you holding up?" Just that. From my mother. 22 missed calls stacked beneath it. Her. My father. Venus. Even Tanya. I stood there, hand cold around my phone, heart crawling its way up my throat. They weren't calling for comfort. I knew that tone. It was the one she used when she needed something done. I didn't open the message. I didn't call back. I tucked the phone into my coat and looked back at the grave. And just then, just as the first shovel of dirt hit the coffin, I understood. To them, this wasn't loss. It was a schedule conflict. When the final words were spoken, the people dispersed politely, like they were leaving a school assembly. Some hugged, some offered soft smiles. A few asked if I needed anything. I nodded, said thank you, meant none of it. The parking lot felt too wide. I stood at the edge, watching families pile into cars, drive off into their own still intact worlds. Arlo's parents offered to have me over for dinner. I said I needed time. What I needed was something I couldn't name, maybe space, maybe silence that didn't feel like a punishment. As I turned back toward my car, I glanced once more at the cemetery. All I could whisper, so quietly even I almost missed it, was, "I buried my husband today, but maybe I buried something else too." I didn't cry. Not then. Not when the engine started. Not even when my phone buzzed again and again, lighting up like a slot machine I never wanted to win. I drove into the dusk, let the buzzing fade into the hum of the road, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what it felt like to be completely alone. The morning after the funeral didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a continuation of something unfinished, like the room was still holding its breath. I woke up late, the side of the bed Arlo used to warm, now cold, his scent still clinging faintly to the pillow. I stayed there for a while, didn't check my messages, didn't move. Eventually, I sat up and grabbed my phone. No texts from Venus, none from my father, no call from Tanya either. But there was one message from my mother. "There's a document you'll need to sign. Call me when you're stable." That was it. No, "I'm sorry." No, "How are you holding up?" Just business. I set the phone down, walked into the kitchen, poured coffee I didn't want. The silence wasn't comforting. It was loaded. I opened my laptop and saw the email in bold. Subject line, "Past due support reimbursement." It wasn't from her personal email. It came from the official address of her real estate firm, the one with her name in the domain. I clicked, a PDF opened, 3 pages long. Header read, "Back rent calculation, property number 213B. My name was listed below, my maiden name, not Christina Hale, not even a footnote about Arlo. 18 months of rent. From the month Arlo got diagnosed to the month he died. Line item after line item, utilities, HOA fees, water and trash. A paragraph at the bottom in bold. Failure to remit full payment within 10 business days may result in legal escalation. $28,460. I stared at the number until it blurred. I called her. Voicemail. I didn't leave one. That number sat in my chest like something sharp. Not surprising, but sharp. Not even anger. Not yet. Just the kind of hollow you feel when you've been proven right about someone you didn't want to be right about. Later that afternoon, I pulled a box from the hallway closet, labeled House Docs. Inside, I found the envelope we kept copies of everything in. Mortgage paperwork, bank statements, emails, only one name on the deed, hers. I had forgotten, or maybe chosen not to remember, that day she insisted on putting it in her name. "Just in case," she'd said. At the time, Arlo and I didn't argue. We were desperate to close, and my father? He'd just smiled tightly and said, "It's family, it's all the same in the end." It never is. I thought back to the first day Arlo invited me to move in. "This place is ours," he said. "No one else's name matters." I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. Turns out he did too. There had been one night, right after the first chemo cycle, when we sat on the couch, lights low, his head in my lap. He whispered, "If they offer something with strings attached, it's not support, it's strategy." I remember nodding, but I didn't listen. I told myself I could manage both, love and loyalty, marriage and bloodline. Now here I was, alone, with a bill that read like a punishment. I flipped to the second page and saw the payment due date. Exactly 1 year to the day after his diagnosis. Not his death. His diagnosis. The day everything changed. Was it a coincidence? I wanted to think so. But something about my mother's timing always felt precise, like she wanted to make sure the dirt was still damp before she asked for money. Last year, Venus had texted me on this same day, not to ask about Arlo, but to confirm seating arrangements for her engagement dinner. Need you to RSVP by tonight, or I'll assume you're not coming. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. I stared at the email again, closed my laptop, got up, walked to the kitchen, wrote a single note on a sticky pad. Don't pay. Don't explain. Just wait. I sat at the kitchen table with Arlo's urn still in the box. I hadn't opened it yet. Didn't have the energy. My plan was simple. Write a quick thank you email to the funeral home, maybe make some tea, go back to bed. Grief makes time strange. Everything moves slow, but your brain never stops. I opened my laptop. Before I could even finish typing, "Thank you for your support," my fingers froze. The browser had auto-loaded Instagram. Top of the feed, Venus, my sister. A boomerang video, champagne flutes clinking midair. Everyone smiling. Caption read, "Surrounded by love. Couldn't ask for a better engagement weekend." It was posted the day Arlo was buried. I scrolled, more images. Tanya laughing. She looked perfect, not sick like she claimed. My parents, both in formal wear, standing behind Venus and her fiancé, toasting. My mother's hand on Venus's shoulder. Everyone in full celebration mode. Not a black ribbon, not a single mention of Arlo. I leaned back, staring at the screen. I hadn't even deleted the funeral flowers yet. They were still sitting in the hallway, petals curling inward like they were embarrassed to be seen. No text from Venus, no call. But there she was, toasting with a smile that stretched from one lie to the next. I clicked into the comment section. "You deserve all the joy, Venus. Your glow is unreal. Love this couple. Wedding soon?" Then one comment, almost buried. "Didn't your brother-in-law just pass away?" No reply, no acknowledgement, just more hearts and champagne emojis. And there it was, Tanya's comment. "Best weekend ever." That was the same Tanya who said she couldn't make the service because she was under the weather. I had begged her. Actually said the words, "I need you there." And she'd responded with, "I promise, if I feel even halfway okay, I'll be right beside you." Apparently, halfway okay meant standing next to my sister, sipping sparkling wine while I stood over a casket. I didn't cry. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I just stared. A memory came in like a punch. Arlo, sitting on the couch with his blanket pulled up to his chin, asking, "Do you think they'll ever really see us? Not tolerate us. See us?" I had told him yes, maybe because I needed to believe it. I clicked into a tagged video. It was from one of Venus's friends, shot at the same event. Venus stood center stage, holding a glass. Everyone hushed. "This day," she said, "is about love, real love, and making space for joy, not drama." The room laughed. Tanya stood beside her, glass in hand. My mother smiled with that tight, controlled pride she always reserved for the daughter who never disappointed her in public. Real love. Not drama. So that's what I had been. Not the grieving widow of a man who died in my arms, but a dramatic inconvenience. I watched the clip twice, 3 times. Let it sink in. Once, long ago, Tanya had looked me in the eyes and said, "I'll never let you go through anything alone." I whispered back to the screen, "Except when it's inconvenient, right?" I didn't comment, didn't DM, didn't scream. Instead, I downloaded the photo of the 4 of them, all dressed up, toasting to their own importance. I printed it, pushed a pin through it, and stuck it to my refrigerator, right next to the funeral program. I looked at both and said, "One day, I'll remember this moment. Not because it hurt, but because it told me everything I needed to know." Then I turned off my phone. Didn't block anyone, not yet, just sat in the quiet and whispered, "Now I know I arrived early, not because I expected anyone else to. By then, I had stopped expecting, but because I wanted to make sure everything was in place. The chairs, the music, the video. I had spent hours cutting it together. A tribute. Quiet, honest, not too long. Just enough to show what mattered. Arlo, laughing with jam on his chin. Arlo, building a shelf that leaned just a little too far to the left. Arlo saying, "I love you," in a voice that still rang in my bones. The memorial chapel was mostly empty, save for a few of his co-workers and a retired neighbor who once helped us shovel snow. No family, not a single one of mine. I sat in the front row and waited. The service began with soft piano music and a few words from the officiant. Then came the moment I'd queued up, the video. The screen stayed black. A message appeared. Technical difficulties. No video will be shown. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I leaned over to the chapel staffer at the side aisle, asked if they could fix it. He looked uncomfortable, then whispered, "Your mother called earlier. Said the video wasn't appropriate for the space. We were told to remove it." My pulse didn't spike. I didn't gasp. I just sat back down, very still. I made it through the rest of the ceremony without moving much. Arlo's name was spoken only once. No one said my name. Afterward, as I stood by the door thanking the few who had come, Michael approached, Arlo's best man. He looked stiff in his suit, the way men do when they're embarrassed and don't want to say why. "I'm sorry I wasn't inside," he said. "I got here early. Your mom told the staff I wasn't on the list. They asked me to leave." I blinked. "You were on the list. Front row." "I figured." He gave a short, apologetic shrug. "Didn't want to cause a scene." The edges of my world started folding in. They hadn't just ignored Arlo. They had scrubbed him clean from the page, and they were working on me next. I drove home with the windows down, not because it was warm, but because I needed something to remind me air still moved. When I got inside, I went straight to the laptop, opened the file again, watched the tribute from beginning to end. Just me, in a quiet apartment, with coffee gone cold beside me. The camera shook a little in one clip. I remember Arlo saying, "Don't edit that, it's the real part." Real. That word didn't mean anything to my family. When I came out, my mother had told me, "This isn't a life that needs broadcasting." She had meant it then. She still did. I closed the laptop, saved the file into a new folder. I named it Not Erased. I got up, walked to the bedroom, and opened the closet. His shirts still hung where I left them. His shoes lined up like he'd be back to grab them any minute. But I knew better now. Tucked at the very back was a small box I hadn't touched since hospice. Inside were letters. Arlo's handwriting, some mine. We'd written to each other when words out loud got too hard. I pulled one out, held it for a long moment. Then I walked back to the desk, opened the drawer, and slid out a padded envelope. I placed the letter inside. Then the USB. On the front, I wrote, "To me. For later." If they wouldn't let me say goodbye, I'd keep finding ways to remember. The house had been quiet since the memorial. Not the kind of quiet that invites reflection, but the kind that lets you know no one's checking in. Not once had the phone lit up with Tanya's name. Not a call. Not even a lazy text. Nothing. I hadn't reached out either. At first, I thought maybe I should. Maybe she needed time, too. But time kept moving, and the silence stopped feeling like grief, started feeling like choice. Tanya once told me, "I'll be there no matter what. You don't even have to ask." She said that after Arlo's diagnosis, hand on my shoulder like some kind of oath. But when I needed her most, she wasn't just late, she disappeared. I remembered the voicemail she left 3 days before the funeral. Her voice had been bright, distracted. "I'm swamped with Venus's engagement planning, but I swear I'll visit soon. I'll bring wine and that weird goat cheese you like." It wasn't the wine I needed. and she never came. I sat on the couch, laptop in my lap, a blanket half draped over my legs, scrolling without direction. Habit, mostly, until I stopped on Venus's latest post. There she was, Venus, grinning beside Tanya in front of a painting. A painting I knew. That canvas used to hang in my bedroom. Arlo's brushwork. Arlo's initials, faded in the bottom corner. The caption read, "Love this piece, a gift from someone who truly understands us." The comment section was full of hearts and flames and, "Where can I get this?" I zoomed in. Just to be sure, it was his. Arlo had made it the winter after we got engaged. Said he wanted something that would outlive him. "For the wall you'll lean on, even when I'm gone," he had told me. I hung it above the dresser, right where I could see it before bed, every night. Now it was in Venus's living room, with Tanya. I didn't know if it had been stolen, gifted behind my back, given up by accident. Didn't matter. It was gone. And not just gone, repurposed, rewritten. I closed the laptop, sat still for a moment, then got up, walked to the hallway, opened the bottom drawer of the old credenza, pulled out the box Tanya and I had shared for decades, cards, letters, pictures from every birthday, road trip, breakup. That box had followed us through college, through moves, through every version of ourselves. I sifted through it slowly. My fingers stopped on a folded letter dated 2 years ago. The ink smudged from where I must have cried reading it. "You two are what love looks like," she'd written. "Don't let the world make you doubt it." Back then, she believed in us. Or maybe she just liked who we were when it didn't cost her anything. Tanya had been the first to cry when I told her Arlo's diagnosis, the only one who didn't flinch. She held my hand and told me she was proud of how I loved him. I believed her. Now all I could feel was that bitter twist, how someone could once mean every word and still vanish when it counted. I picked up my phone, typed a message, saw the painting, paused, then deleted it. There was no point, not anymore. I stood up, walked over to the bookshelf. On the top, tucked between an old photo album and a stack of journals, was the last painting Arlo made just for me, smaller than the others. A shoreline under a gray sky, one person standing alone, facing the waves. He had told me, "This one's just for you, no one else would get it." He was right. I took it down and placed it above my bed, not out of reach, but close enough to see every morning. "I still know what we had," I said out loud, my voice steady, "even if they pretend they don't." And that was the thing about Tanya. She didn't leave with a bang. She just never came back. The envelope arrived mid-morning, hand-delivered, certified. It had my name in a typeface that felt too clean for the mess I knew it carried. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the counter next to a cup of coffee I hadn't touched and a half-written grocery list I wasn't sure I'd ever use. When I finally slid it open, I wasn't surprised, just tired. Inside was a thick document, legal letterhead, the logo from my mother's firm, my maiden name typed neatly at the top. Title: Reconciliation of Conditional Wedding Gift. Page after page, it outlined every dollar they ever spent on our behalf. From the down payment of the condo to the bedroom furniture, even the floral arrangements they contributed to at the wedding. At the time, they'd said it was a gift. "For your future," my father had said, patting Arlo on the back with that same tight-lipped smile he always used when talking to service staff. Reading it now, it wasn't a gift. It was a trap set years ago, timed to spring the moment Arlo wasn't here to hold it back. I walked through the apartment, hand still holding the letter, stopping in front of the couch. The throw pillows were on the list. So was the dining table. So was the rug under my feet. The apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like evidence. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I grabbed a notebook from the shelf, sat on the edge of the bed, and made a list, item by item, what I was willing to give back. It was most of it, except one thing. I walked to the corner of the room where the painting still hung. Arlo had painted it just for me, a small canvas with a gray ocean and a sliver of gold sky. He once told me, "It's not supposed to make sense to anyone but you." I stared at it for a long time. That would stay. Later that afternoon, I called a lawyer, not to start a war, just to protect what was mine. When she asked me to summarize the situation, I said, "If love needs an invoice, it's not love, it's branding." That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my phone, mostly out of habit, scrolled through nothing. Some part of me, stupid maybe, still hoped Tanya might text. She hadn't, but I did check her profile. Quietly. Just once. One of Venus's posts had been deleted, but the comments remained. One stood out. "So glad you chose them." It was followed by a reply. Hard not to when it's all branded in gold. And then I saw it. Tanya's tiny profile photo, next to a like on a comment that read, "Christina always was a bit dramatic." I blinked. It was gone a few minutes later, probably unliked in a panic. I had taken screenshots by then. It didn't make me angry, just clear. Tanya hadn't forgotten me. She had picked a side, and it wasn't mine. The next morning, I printed the contract, laid it flat on the dining table. Next to it, I placed one of our wedding photos, the one where Arlo is looking at me like no one else is in the room. I lit a candle, not for prayer, just to light something up in the middle of all this cold calculation. "They thought they could bury him," I said out loud, "and bury me in paperwork." I opened my laptop, started pulling every document I had, receipts, bank records, email threads, not to fight, not yet, but so I'd be ready when the fight showed up at my door. Let them come. This time, I'd be ready. The phone rang just after lunch. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. "Christina?" a man's voice said. "It's Tim, from Arlo's old firm." I hadn't spoken to Tim since the week after the funeral. "I found something," he said, hesitating like he wasn't sure if he should. "Arlo gave me a copy of his will a while back, told me to hold on to it. Just in case." Just in case. That phrase again. He emailed it to me within the hour. I opened it while standing in the kitchen, the hum of the fridge in the background, my coffee forgotten on the counter. It didn't match the version on file with the estate attorney. In this one, his handwriting scanned onto every page, my name was listed as sole beneficiary. Everything to me. No family discretion clause, no mention of my mother, no vague language about splitting assets between next of kin. I sat down on the floor, paper in hand, back against the fridge. Arlo had known. He knew they would try something. And he prepared for it. I remembered one night, not long before the end, when he'd looked at me and said, "I know your family. I made backups." I thought he meant tax stuff, bank passwords. I didn't realize he meant protection from them. That afternoon, I took the original will to my lawyer. She looked it over, lips pressed thin. "This is legally stronger," she said, flipping the pages slowly, "especially with the dated signature and witness stamp. But we'll need to move fast." I nodded. I'd already started moving. On the way home, stopped at a red light, I opened my phone. A notification from Venus. New video posted. Curiosity got the better of me. It was a toast from her engagement party. She stood under string lights, champagne in hand, the crowd laughing easily around her. "If I've ever learned how to love," she said, smiling wide, "it was by watching our parents, not anyone else." Scattered claps. Then someone off-screen called out, "You mean your sister and her situation?" Venus laughed, shrugged. "That wasn't love. That was dependency." They laughed louder at that. I didn't. I sat at a green light while cars honked behind me. Let them honk. Back at home, I didn't cry. I watched the video again. And again. Each time, slower. They didn't just take my name off a piece of paper. They took the story we built and twisted it into a cautionary tale, a joke at a party. I closed the app, opened my laptop, created a folder. They think I'm quiet. In it, I uploaded everything. Arlo's original will, our marriage license, the lease on the apartment, medical records, photos of us over the years, every receipt, every date-stamped document I had, not to fight today, but to build a wall around the truth before they tried to burn it down. They've used silence to win, I whispered. I'll let truth make noise. I didn't call Venus. I didn't message Tanya. I didn't drive to my parents' house to wave papers and demand apologies. Let them talk. Let them get louder. Louder people are easier to catch in their own lies. I opened another folder, not erased, and moved it into the new one. Protected. Prepared. 2 days later, a letter arrived from the estate manager. Final meeting to divide assets. At my parents' firm, not neutral ground, their ground. I didn't flinch. I RSVP'd yes. If they wanted a quiet widow, they should have left the will alone. I ironed my blouse that morning with more care than I had for anything in weeks. My hair was tied back in a way Arlo always liked. Clean, calm, in control. The USB drive was already in my folder, snug between a printout of his will and our wedding license. I wasn't dressing up for show. I was dressing for war. Just before I left, an email came in. It was from my mother's assistant. Please confirm that you intend to maintain a graceful tone during the discussion. I didn't reply, but I did whisper to myself. They always mistake grace for silence. Let's fix that today. The meeting was held in the same conference room they used for Venus's brand launch last spring. Same polished table, same catered coffee, same wide screen mounted on the wall. I greeted everyone like I'd been raised to, measured, polite. My father nodded, my mother didn't. Venus scrolled on her phone. Tanya looked everywhere but at me. I'd like to share a memory before we begin, I said, reaching for the remote. No one objected. I pressed play. Arlo's voice came first, soft but steady. He was sitting on the edge of our bed in hospice. The video framed him against a window with golden light spilling across his hands. I don't want a legacy. I just want her to be okay, he said. She showed up for me every day, even when it got hard to look at me. The room shifted. My mother's jaw clenched. My father leaned back. Tanya blinked like she hadn't expected the sound of him. Then came clips of us together. Quiet dinners, our tiny wedding, walks through the park. Receipts followed. The marriage license, the original will, a scan of the altered one, highlighted. And finally, Venus, her engagement toast. Love isn't always loud, it's sometimes just dependency dressed up in ceremony, she said, holding her glass. The crowd laughed in the clip. In the room, no one did. The video faded to a white screen with one line of text. I'm not asking to be remembered. I'm proving I existed. I let the silence hang. No closing statement, no tears, just closed the folder and folded my hands. My mother stared like the clip hadn't registered. Venus kept her chin high but wouldn't meet my eyes. Tanya glanced down and didn't look up again. I stood, thanked them for their time, and walked out. Later that evening, back home, I uploaded the video. No captions, no context, just a title. The Widow They Left Out. It started slow, a few views, then hundreds, then thousands. Grief forums picked it up first, then a nonprofit, then a widow support group on the East Coast. Then it hit local news. The comments came like a tide. I see you. This happened to me too. You weren't wrong. I left my family over a letter like this. You gave me the courage to say something. A well-known grief speaker shared it with the caption, "Families break you twice, once in life, once in loss." My phone rang 3 times that week with press requests. I declined each one. "Everything I needed to say," I told the last caller, "is in that video." I didn't post it for sympathy. And when sponsors began quietly pulling out of Venus's wellness launch, I didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory. This was a shift, a consequence, a line drawn where I'd let them walk for too long. 3 days later, walking down Main Street, a woman at a corner cafe stopped me. "Christina?" she asked, handing me a latte. "I just wanted to say thank you for saying it out loud." I nodded. Didn't say much. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even proud. Just steady. They tried to bury him with silence. Then they tried to bury me in shame, but silence doesn't erase truth. At home that night, I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Proof. I deleted it. But I kept a copy on an old drive, tucked away with Arlo's letters. I didn't win. I just refused to lose quietly. The clerk asked me why. I stood there, papers in hand, my reflection caught in the security glass behind her. I wasn't wearing black, not anymore, just a deep blue blouse and a name I was ready to put down. "Reason for name change?" she repeated politely, without looking up. I took a breath. "To stop carrying their silence." She typed it without a second glance, the sound of the keys sharp and final. No press, no family, no one sitting in the plastic chairs along the wall. Just me, doing the last thing I would ever do with the name they gave me, the name that never protected me, never defended me, never stood by me. I chose my grandmother's maiden name instead. The woman who once told me, "Blood is a label, respect is earned." And when the final form was signed, I stepped outside, not victorious, not vindicated, but free, not a trophy, not a victim, just mine again. The letter came 2 days later, no return address, but I knew the handwriting, slanted. Press too hard. It was hers. Inside, a folded sheet. No, dear Christina, no apology, just, "Let's talk like family. If you'd like to avoid further complications, we can settle all matters in writing. Please consider signing the enclosed closure agreement." I didn't read the rest, didn't even unfold the second page. I walked to the fireplace, took the same matchbox Arlo had used the day we moved in, struck one clean flame, and dropped the envelope onto the grate. It caught fast, quiet, ash curling at the edges before anything even turned black. I didn't watch it all the way down. I knew what was in it. Strings. More paper chains. No anger. No drama. Just the calm refusal to walk back into a room I had fought to leave. They still thought closure was theirs to offer. They never realized I'd already closed the door. That afternoon, I pulled out the photo from the lavender field. The one where Arlo's smile was uneven but real, sun in his eyes, his arm tight around my waist. I framed it and set it next to his urn. Then I sat on the floor, unfolded one of his hospice letters. His handwriting had gotten shakier, but the message was still clear. "Promise me you won't shrink just to make them feel bigger. Don't fade. Not for anyone." I didn't reply out loud, but I nodded. He would have seen it. The next morning, I drove back to the coast, the same shoreline he'd painted for me. I parked a little farther down this time, past the usual walkways, away from the families and joggers. In my coat pocket, I carried a single white rose. I stepped to the edge of the rocks and dropped it into the tide. No speech, no prayer, just watched it float, then drift, and disappear. They hadn't come to say goodbye. But I didn't need their absence to shape my grief anymore. I didn't feel haunted, just light. Back home, I opened a new journal. First page, first line. This is what healing without permission looks like. Then I registered for a writing workshop. New name, new chapter. Same story, mine this time. I opened the top drawer of my desk and pulled out the handkerchief Arlo had stitched. A C. I placed it in a shadow box frame, hung it by the front door. Not for mourning, for legacy. I didn't get justice. I got something better. I got me back.